thank you all for coming and being here for this reception and talk. This is one of my favorite things to do because I think that so often people go to see artwork and they have questions, but there's no one there to answer the questions. And so one of my big overriding elements of the mission behind these gallery exhibitions is to have the artists come and be here and answer questions and give an opportunity for people to interact with the artists and get answers to the questions that arise. So today I'm so happy to be bringing you this artist because I guess I probably met her. I was trying to think of where we met, but I think what happened was, yes, it was in New York because I think we're having a show at First Street. Maybe we were in a show at First Street, and we had a mutual friend. We were visiting our mutual friend who took us to see your wonderful paintings, and then we all went out to dinner. And that's how I got to know you. And this is Nicole Santiago. She teaches painting at William & Mary. She has a BFA from Indiana State University. Where she's from originally. I just learned that today. And an MFA, Master of Fine Arts, from UNH, from University of New Hampshire. I have to ask you about that. I spent some time in New Hampshire. But I was so gratified that she was agreeable to bring her paintings here because I was knocked out by them. They're beautiful paintings with these dizzying perspectives and this really interesting themes of the sort of the struggle that a lot of artists have in today's culture, which is having a sort of a normal life and a creative life, and trying to have those two things at the same time. And through the use of familiar objects and metaphorical implications, she really gets at that dilemma that exists. There are also some wonderful figurative works that I don't see very often anymore. I don't see a lot of really fine, skilled figurative works when I go out to galleries, and so it's wonderful to see that. And then also because this is very much an educational gallery, I find that these paintings are incredibly informative to painting students. I think the paint handling and the drawing and the color, especially in her use of reflected light, it can be so instructive to a painting student, frustrating to a painting student too, because she pulls it off in a way that is really marvelous and very difficult to duplicate. But so when Nicole agreed to bring her paintings and share them with you and share them with our community college community, I was thrilled. So without too much further ado, I would just like to give the floor to Nicole Santiago and ask her to tell us some more about her work. Please, welcome.
I recorded that and I'm going to play it when I am in my studio and everything's cracked. So thank you all for being here, and again, thank you, Gerry, for inviting me. I was really honored. So I describe myself as a narrative painter, and I think even in paintings, just the still lifes, I still think there's an element of narrative. So that's something that I'm always thinking about. So I'm gonna try to introduce you to a painting, or maybe not introduce you, remind you, you've seen it before, to painting, orally without having a visual. So you can kind of imagine how to describe it. So there's this painting that's been really instrumental to me for several years, and it's in Pompeii in the Middle of Mysteries. This is an ancient painting, probably 400 BC, and I think scholars aren't really sure of the narrative content, the details, but what they are, most of them are confident on, is that it depicts the Dionysian initiation rite from into womanhood. So it's painted. It's probably a room a little smaller than this foyer here, and it's square. Probably, and actually it's really kind of convenient. The paintings probably span about the height of this green wall, and so. And actually really convenient too. It's marked almost like a comic book in that there's pillars, and you can just imagine the line between each section of this wall covering being a pillar. And so this young woman or older girl, teenager, starts off on the end, and each time you see a pillar, it transitions to a different part of the story. And so each time there's a segment divided by pillars, the narrative moves on, and the woman is present through every section. And so I look at this painting a lot, and she goes through some pretty horrific experiences and has to perform some very intense tasks, and then at the end she's very serene and calm and looking back on it. So it symbolizes a lot of different things. But most recently I've been inspired by one of the first few frames where she's at the beginning of her journey, and she comes in with this huge tray of food, and she's presenting it to these goddesses who are seated. And I thought a lot about that transition from one moment to the next. She's sort of transitioning to segments of this big plate of food. And I thought about it as an offering, but also how we share food during life's most intense or significant milestones. So, a baby shower. Many of these things, cake is present, not always, so baby shower, or in most cultures, not necessarily in ours, but in most cultures, the birth of a child, there's a party and there's food shared, and certain dishes are shared. A birthday, an anniversary, a marriage, even when someone passes away, right? We sit around over food and discuss and celebrate this person. So I started painting cakes, one, for that reason, and two, for a little bit more ridiculous reason. When I was married in 2008, my mom made this 3-tier vessel that looked like a cake. And there was a slot out of the top, and she put it on the gift table, and you could put monetary gifts in. And so I think that's here. And I painted it a little smaller than it is, this cake up here. But that's kind of the shape of it. It's a wedding cake. And I go, gosh, when I was a kid, when I draw birthday cakes, I wanted to be it. So I did this when I was a kid. I draw birthday cards, and I wanted it to be this big tiered monstrosity, and I put all these candles on it. And so I thought, this is just like the thing I did as a kid. So let's put candles on top and light it, and see what happens. So since I have this thing in my studio, I'm looking at the Bill of Mysteries, and particularly that segment of the painting, and I start painting cakes. And I'm thinking about at this time I'm married, pregnant, and so thinking about just marking milestones and thinking about my own rites of passage through womanhood, and how that's panning out. So trying to address that in a contemporary way. So trying to do that in mysteries, that segment of painting. So there's that symbolism of the case. And then there's another thread that goes through some of them. Another narrative thread. And I like the narrative paintings to have layers to them. So when you walk up to the painting, there's an initial read. And of course the viewer is bringing their own baggage with them, their own narratives, and their own narratives and experiences layered on top of what's visually present. And you do this with everything. Advertisers are really good at it. We're really good at pulling out those internal narratives and applying there's an initial read of, there's a cake, and we don't buy cakes to eat or eat ourselves, by ourselves, and we don't make them to sit down and eat one or binge watch or eat or whatever, the TV show you're watching. But we buy them to share with people. So when we see one, we imagine that happening. And so there's that narrative, and then like I said, there's a second narrative string running through where when the figure starts to be introduced, I want it not only to be about this, there's a celebration or there's a party that's taking place most of the times outside the frame. So you're not seeing the party, but you're seeing the remnants, or you're seeing the movement right before the woman coming through the balloons. She's just about to enter. So she's moving from one threshold, the door, on the right, into the party on the left, the lights going. And so, say in ones like this one, again, the party's taking place outside. It's, a painting of myself pregnant, and there's cake and pieces of eaten, so there's really a willingness to share the cake. And then, so this starts to become too about indulgence. So sort of two layers there. The cake as a symbol, as a mile marker, right? And the celebration, and also the idea of indulging in that cake or indulging in an experience, and sometimes overindulging. So I was sort of thinking about that with the figure pieces, is the overindulgence in this event, in this cake, or maybe just a bigger idea of overindulgence and excess, and how that can potentially unbalance either your body if it's consumed, or your spirit if it's, I guess, consumed in a way non-big consumption, like watching it. Great show, or playing video games, or being around someone who's crazy. Right? So how excess can really unbalance a person, almost sometimes to comatose states. A lot of paintings, our historian pointed out that there's this great painting by Google, and it's called Land of Cocaine, and I don't know how I've never seen this painting, but I haven't. Or hadn't at this point, but it's perfect. So in the painting, there's a house, and the whole roof is covered with pies, there's roasted fowl flying through the air, there's those sausages running around the ground with the legs, and there's food everywhere that's animated and alive. It's in abundance. And the figures are all laying around the tree in a comatose. And so again, talking about excess, and how excess can really figures, people, and so that's another layer to the narratives. Some of the narratives are more autobiographical than others, and I never want to be too overt. And so I think about film when I'm thinking about narrative, and how I can go see the Hollywood cookie cutter, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm entertained, but I don't think about it after I'm looking at it. Or I can go see a film that's really complicated, and I have to use my brain and really think, and I'm still thinking about it days later. But whether or not I liked it, I'm still thinking about it, because the narrative wasn't so overt, and it caused me to participate. And so, in narratives, I want the viewer to have to participate. Right? You have to think and layer their own experiences. So maybe even more important than the concept of the theme of the narrative is formal. Right? So how the painting is constructed and whether or not it works. So painting can be really unified. Right? And sometimes it can be too unified. So there's not enough variation in it, and it becomes really limiting or boring. When there's too much variation, then it becomes unified. So you're constantly struggling to balance those two. So I'm constantly thinking about the elements and principles of design, thinking about Gestalt principles. So almost in a way, think about them maybe I do it through white circles. And in a way, even though it's not a circle, it starts to be a variation of a circle. Maybe I want you to move down the peak, through catching this flesh color in the leg, and kind of catching the curve of her body, and coming back up and circling back around, catching this again. And certainly the circle is being repeated again and again, right? Moving around the circles, even when they're not clear outline circles. So trying to find some repetition, finding variation, doing it with line, movement, color, shape. If there's a movement, where does it lead? So anytime there's a movement or you're following a form, where does it go? Right? So it needs to go somewhere. So maybe this comes down here and starts to catch up to this box. Which then starts to follow this line here. Or maybe we do something and come down here to something like this. You're probably not supposed to touch me. I figure I touched it before, so. Sorry, that was bad form on my part. But this is kind of how I'm thinking of devising a painting. So maybe working, I might get stuck in this. Looks like crap. What's going on? Okay, I need an orange square right here. And so I'll just put the orange square and I'll let it sit for a long time before I'll figure out what that's going to be a representation of. My goal one day is to get to the point where I can leave that one orange square as an orange square and make it work. I'm not there yet. Maybe it happens a little more in this one because this horizontal is here is mostly indented. So in that one, maybe it starts to happen more. But the rest of them are observed with minor moments of invention. This is completely invented except for the figures in the blue shirts, which is just copying my whole painting there. So, anyway, that's what I'm trying to go with painting. So we'll see how I'm going to arrange that. Yeah, open the questions.
I think it's really interesting what you said about, well, first of all, the references. I did Bill of Mystery Paintings, of course, incredibly great paintings. And I realized that you actually, you're painting, those are maybe a little more than half size.
Yeah.
And that's not what these are. There's more of a reference to that, of course. And then, of course, the red wall that's part of those paintings as well. That particular painting really does harken back to that. But then I can't believe that, I didn't really think of the land painting either, but then you painted that without having to.
Well, that isn't.
Because the figures are splayed out on the ground in these impossible angles, which is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about. Is this viewpoint that you use, which is very high, and I like how it changes from the top of the painting. You're just about looking out until you're really, so it's almost like a fisheye kind of thing. You're looking almost straight down vertically at the bottom of the painting, and it's puts out. So, how do you achieve that, and what do you? I don't know. Where did that come from? That idea?
Well, those paintings abstract a little more, not in terms of whether or not you understood what the objects were, but they come a little flatter. So I picked up some sort of apparatus. It really was shaky on a ladder, and did a camera timer and posed for myself. And then I set the still light up. And so the head is painted from a photograph, and then I had a model come in to do the rest of the body. So I think it's incredibly hard to paint photographs. They have such a hard time with color. And then the objects I pulled underneath me. So I got down from the ladder and I pulled them underneath right here. So the cake, I'm standing, here's the cake and I'm painting it. And then if I had to push them out a little bit, I just move them a little bit further out. so that was a little bit hard to resolve. And I think sometimes it's not resolved when the perspective gets goofy. But
Once it's busy, it makes you, it keeps you off balance as a viewer, which is really wonderful. Great.
well, good, that's working.
But that does bring up the idea. I imagine that you had to use some photo, you had to set up some of this as photography, and some of it as direct observation. I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about blending those two, because there's a lot of working from photographs is really problematic, but helpful and fast. So,
Well, I think, I don't know if this is happening to the students, but when I was in undergrad, working from a photograph was like murdering a baby. I mean, it was just, you just didn't do it. It was awful, you're a bad person if you did it, and I don't feel that way. I think you use what you use, and if you can make a great painting, if you need to paint with dirt or whatever, or do the seance to get it to work, then you just do it. So, but I think it's hard, and now I understand why they didn't want me to do this, and why they needed to look, how to really look. And when I was looking at the photograph, I was using the camera's eye. How do I use my eye to do this? Totally different experience, and it's much harder when you first start doing it. But after you do it for a while, you realize, no, it's actually harder to make a great painting from a photograph, because the color is just, when you get into the darks, the color grays down. When you get into the light, the color grays down. So you lose all this information and to make it up. And it's incredibly hard. So it's a lot of trial and error. Sometimes I can't mirror myself like this. So the head's from a photograph, and I kind of made up the belly, and the hand is from a photograph. I didn't hire a model for this one. This one, the model. And so the rest is from observation. So I'm like matching my skin tone with paint under a certain light to try and get that color. And then I found while I'm doing that, but it doesn't relate to the painting. And so I've probably repainted that head 20 times. Because it just, and I showed it. And I brought it back and I said, no, it's still not working. I repainted it. I showed it again. I got it home. I didn't like it. I repainted it again. I'll probably repaint it again when you look at a different situation, you're like, that's not working. I'm going to look back over. And so, like, I'm looking at it all year. Do something here. So that answers your question.
yeah, yeah, because I think that, if you photographic references can be really helpful. I think it's important to know why you're using them and use them for anybody to be to use them. One of the best reasons is to see something that you can't easily see, or to hold something still that you can't easily hold still. So to see your own head from sort of above or laying on the floor, that's kind of hard to do.
I wasn't going to close up the mirror.
Right, like a mirror and a painting, and you're laying on your back, and, that wouldn't work very well. It's just a very difficult drawing, foreshortening that you're not going to deal with that.
Oh, drawing. Oh, gosh. I think I drew the cake, the ellipses on the cake. I don't even know.
Yeah, ellipses, I mean, that's true. We do a whole day over. But,
You come in here and correct mine.
but does anybody else have, how about some other questions from
I have one question, but I'm ready to get laughed at.
Everybody get ready to laugh.
Okay, I did my gallery report essay on this specific assignment. I was coming across looking at these paintings, and one thing I noticed was this painting. Okay, this is where the dumb question comes in. Okay, this is supposed to be a soda ball, right? Or is this like this one right here?
Oh, the 8-ball.
So it was an 8-ball,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Oh, yeah. It's
That's what I was trying to figure out. If
Yeah.
it was 8-ball or soda ball, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, because what's going to happen when this
What
baby
lies
comes?
ahead?
Because I was like, why is there an 8-ball and it's like this random picture? And I was like, well, I got to thinking for a minute, and I got to thinking about my mom and my grandmother, and like how people, like when people gamble, they take risks. And that's what a mother has to do when she's having a baby. She has to take risks in life and what she wants to get rid of and what she wants to keep, because it's not about you, it's about the baby. Once you have the baby, that's it.
You're right, that's it. That's it for sleep, that's it for personal time, that's it. Yeah.
Well, that's, I hope I didn't overstate that in the introduction, but that's sort of one of the things that I was picking up on, is like, a normal, life we kind of have in our culture, but also being something that's not really normal in our culture as an artist, which is right to do both those things. Is that in here? Am I reading that?
Yeah, I mean, your child is too, it's, man, what do you do? Because the pursuit to paint is a really selfish one. I mean, you're doing something that really isn't, I mean, to me, and you one can argue, I don't think it, not many people care about what I'm doing in the studio. I'm going to paint because I would just, lose it if I didn't, because I have to. And it's sort of a selfish pursuit. Then you have to sacrifice really your whole self for a child. And what do? How do you balance that, right? You have to paint. But you have to take care of your child, and it's weird, and it's confusing, and there's a lot of guilt. Just do it. Just do it. You have to. It's possible. I had so many professors, female professors, tell me, you can't do both. And then I had children who said you can, but it's really hard, and you figure it out. You don't do a lot of other things like put away laundry or your dishes. And that's what happens. But so that's my house is a mess. But my kids fed and they can get to the studio.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I do. That's something I think I've said to a lot of you guys too. Is if you ever stop painting, no one will care. No one will get upset. So you better be able to make yourself do that. Because if you think it's hard to have a teacher tell you that you need to get a painting done, wait till you don't have a teacher that tells you have to get a painting done. You will never get a painting done. If you need a teacher to tell you to get a painting done, then how are you going to do that when you don't have a teacher? I mean, so it's got to be something that you're just committed to. I'm just talking to you. And yet, trying to get people to understand that you need this time in your studio. I mean, I don't want to be turned into a lecture, but your best friends are the people who will not let you paint. They're the ones. The people who love you the most, the people who praise you for your work, the people who say, I love your painting. But they want you to do something and get you out of the studio all the time. And so, and to tell them, no, I have to paint, they're like, oh, they always think there's always some other time that you could be doing that. But there isn't. Now
it's true. There's a good book called Art and Fear. It's really easy to read. And somewhere in there, I haven't read it in a couple of years, I read it every now and again. It says, I can't remember the exact statistic, but over 90% of BFA graduates, and that's not BA, BFA, it's Bachelor of Fine Arts, so they've had even more experience in undergrad than BA. Over 90% stop working 5 years out of school. Yikes. But I think if you know that statistic, then when you find yourself not painting for weeks on end, you think to yourself, I'm becoming that statistic, and it's scary about going to the studio.
stay in that 10%.
Yeah. It's scary statistic.
How about
how many different colors of paint do you have in tubes? I understand that you do mix your own colors because some of those colors that you have in these paintings you can't find in a tube, but how many different kinds of tubes of paint do you possibly have as an estimate?
Question. I have dozens, but on my palette at any one time there's probably 10, 12 at the most. But you're right. Most very few moments where the red is direct, cadmium red, medium, and cadmium red light, but most of the colors are mixed, even the whites have some vivid.
Thinking of the palette, or the artist palette is really idiosyncratic. What's your color then? You just stop painting and stop making it?
Oh, well, maybe cadmium red.
Oh, you know,
Uh-oh.
you've been painting, you know that the
Expensive.
EU is thinking about banning cadmium color.
I know, that's bad, I know.
Is there a board you better stop that?
I know.
Now, that's an incredibly useful color.
They're considering banning that.
Nick, do you want to?
Yeah, I was discussing this with Banner earlier. You mentioned a moment ago the idea of like when is a painting done and when is you as an artist. Because I'm an art major at PCU, and that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I'm kind of curious about from a professional. When are you done with the painting, and when is the painting done? When do you find that person?
No, that's a whole seminar. When you're done, I don't know. That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer because sometimes I think I've done it, and like you said, I pull my money back out and rework it. And sometimes I think I've done it, and I look at it and then realize I'm not, and decide not to work on it. Because I'd rather put my efforts forward instead of backward. That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when it's at a level of resolution that I'm okay with, and I think I've worked up to my limit, or I've got shit for show, those two things cause me to take it off the wall because I'm putting it in storage or shipping. Yeah. That's a good question. I struggled with this one on the end. I emailed it to friends, like, is it done? I know that there's some areas that are unresolved, but I like how it's resolved there, I know what to do. And I just thought, it's done, forget it, I'm over it, and if I want to re-enter it later, I can set it back up.
Maria?
Yeah, I wanted to read, I got 3 questions. One, the painting over there with the red background, it reminded me, I know it's whimsical, but I don't care. It's reminded me of Cinderella with the first female artist who was doing the movie with this thing. She was doing the background, and it slowly got from very pale to very dark when she was in a very stressful, emotional state. I was wondering, is that what you were trying to portray in the background, how you were feeling at the moment?
Okay, that's a good question. I watch that movie all the time with my daughter, she's 2 and 3. It's really beautiful. So you're talking about this one here, the red background. Okay, so that one I wasn't thinking a lot of the mysteries and maybe a little bit more literal. That painting, but it was the underlying narrative that I don't think most people would come to. Some people do, but most don't, and that's okay. It was about the transition between being single and then being married, being attached to someone, being responsible to someone. And so that's when the figures walking through a threshold. And we can't see where she's going because I didn't know where it's going. And we can't see where she's been. But the light from the two rooms, the light from the right is natural light, and the light from the left is incandescent light. So they're trying to insinuate 2 different atmospheres. So I wasn't thinking about it getting darker, but I was thinking about a light change, signifying 2 different mental states, or 2 different places in life.
Did you think at all about Annunciation painting?
Yes.
That painting?
Yeah.
Because they so often take place in the threshold.
Yeah.
And I also wondered about the placement of the green balloon, very sort of foreshadowing.
Yeah, you do things like that and don't realize it later. Or you do and realize it,
Yeah,
you
right,
realize
right,
it later.
right.
So I think everyone, if you're painting, to watch that you might put things in your painting and you don't realize you do it until later. Yeah, that was an accident. I mean, these were on, I had this tripod And then that movement was too strong, so I put that other balloon in there.
Break it a little bit.
Yeah, to break that movement. Yeah, so it was formal, and then later I realized it was symbolic.
Late as well. Because that's a really interesting thing that I want to ask you about as well, is that how you go to elaborate lengths to set up
Yeah.
arrangements. And I do too. And so I know that that's, to me, that's the beginning of the work. Before the paints come out, before the paper gets stretched or whatever, it's like there's this whole thing of like actually working with objects. And so I wanted to ask her, I don't know what I wanted to ask her about, but I guess maybe what I really want to do is I want to impress upon the audience what a big deal that is. That's not happenstance, and that, you know, the idea that it's still like this an accidental arrangement of objects is so, it's so hard to make things look accidental. So can you talk a little bit about placement of objects?
That's right on, yeah. You know, sometimes I feel like I want these to look like I came upon them. There was a lot of figuring action with the objects and some sort of randomness in to complete that. Sometimes I would knock the still life over or knock things over and then kind of look at where they are and accept some and rearrange others. It's hard.
And what you're doing, like, which is different than than a lot of still life arrangement, is that you're not only, one of the things that you're doing really wonderfully is not only a formal arrangement, which is here, definitely a formal arrangement. That is, what I mean by that is that the relationship to the sizes and colors of objects makes kind of sense, like the angle of the movement of the balloons and stuff like that. But you're also trying to create this narrative idea that these things were randomly placed down by a score of different people who were all interacting with these objects, tossing down fork, carefully placing a plate of cake, you know, discarding a piece of paper, and to make it look like the actual remnants of activity, to make it look like the remnants of people doing things. And that's, you do a marvelous job of that. But it's a different kind. What's cool about that is that I think that it's easier to pile things up on top of each other and have them all like touching, but to put these spaces between objects, I think that's really tricky because the space becomes very integral to the formal relationship. That doesn't sound too much speaky, but
No, yeah. The shapes and the negative space aren't just as important as the objects. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And, you know, I think at any point, you just paint to your ability. And sometimes your eye is ahead of that ability and you see what's wrong and you just can't paint past it. But you just keep doing it. And like I said, I look at these paintings and they bother me. But what are you going to do? Right? You do the best you can, and then you either come back and fix it, or you want to make the next one better. But yeah, it's hard to get those negative spaces to become activated. And this one had, this blanket was bright red, it was blue, it had a pattern, it didn't have a pattern, then it had a pattern again. It was bright pink, and so there was all kinds of, yeah. But another thing I do is I'll take a photograph of a painting and pull it in Photoshop. When I painted over something, you know, too many times, and I just, okay, I'm done. And I'll take it to Photoshop and I'll play with colors. And I'll cut things and move them. So sometimes it's about moving a cake over 5 inches because I play with it in Photoshop and it works and work on everything. But yeah.
yeah, that's kind of interesting how that's crept into as a tool.
It's a great tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's tools in light photography. You know, it's always, I think it's just important always to treat them like tools and not like, I don't know, crutches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask, what kind of brand of paint do you use and who did the frames?
Okay, so the brand is mostly I use Williamsburg, which is made in New York, and Old Holland. Very few Old Holland paints. There's a few. I use Naples yellow, Old Holland, and I'll use a Criminals white from Old Holland. Old Holland's very expensive and very dry paint, and I don't use turpentine or medium, so the dry paint's problematic. So those are the two colors, just because the colors are just, I haven't found satisfactory colors in other paints. And the rest I use Williamsburg there. The paint has enough oil in it. I mean, I do add oil to the paints. The Williamsburg paints are loose enough that I don't have to mix in layers. They're ready to go. And frames, I do my own frames, and it's a learning process, and I'm still learning. And, you know, each batch gets a little better, and, you know, it's, what it is, I guess. You learn, right, from each one, what you're gonna do differently the next time. Yeah.
Framing is really expensive. Framing is one of the best things an artist, I think, should learn to do for themselves, because just a little bit of finish carpentry, and you know, it's a good thing.
And a lot of patience.
Especially if you're spending money on a whole paint.
Just two colors. Just two colors, that's it, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's some good paint.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I know, yeah. It's really good. What are you gonna do?
But it's, yeah, it is. Anybody else?
I have two questions, if you don't mind. One, I see that it's, for some of these you used, it looks like black. Is it black, or is it not black?
It's not black. Occasionally I use black. You know what mostly I use black for is skin. That's mostly, like the black sits on my palette for months, and most of the time when I go to get it, it's dry. I mean, I cover my palette with saran wrap when I'm using it to stay wet for a while, but I use it in flesh to cool down flesh. But
It does not allow black.
yeah, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't either, because you know why? Because every
It
time
drains the color.
it drains the color. Because you're not looking at the color.
I wonder why you tell them, because I tell them.
Well,
I don't
okay.
get, see, I'm not crazy.
You can't see it on the shirt, right? But you can see the difference in her blacks. The black of her pants and the black of her jacket. And they're different temperatures. And so the student says, it's black, and just paints with black paint, but it's not iron black. Neither of those things are really iron black.
I was mostly asking because of the 8-ball.
The 8-ball has black in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
In it.
In it. It's mixed with other colors.
All right.
Yeah.
And the second thing is,
So it can use black, but it has to be mixed with something else.
But you should
Look,
learn.
you know what it is? It's because the object is black. The big reason that, well, it's not the only reason, but one of the other reasons is that it should never be used to make the color darker. If the object is black, we can talk.
that's good.
But if you have like a blue thing and you want to make it darker blue, that's just
Makes it complicated.
That's just.
Right. So no, that's right.
That's one.
I've been paying attention to his class.
But you should, and you learn how to do it without black. And then when you add black, you'll never use it with black.
Yeah,
And then there are
that's-
some weird things, some weird colors that you like. Like there's a kind of, you can make a really cool green with ivory black and yellow. But if you're trying to make that green that is paintable that way, then that's a use, then that's like an approved use. But the way people normally grab for the black is what I'm trying to stop them from doing.
What is your take on
Second
cadmium
question.
orange here?
What's that?
What is your take on cadmium orange?
So then we get into, then you talk about saturation. That's another issue.
My second question is, have you ever considered using lapis lazuli blue paint? It's only called lazurite. Have you ever used it before?
I have a little bitty tube. There's this guy that does specialty paint colors called Robert. His name's Robert Dove, and he's crazy. And when you call him, you'll realize, because you want to order paint, and he talks to you for half an hour and asks you all kind of questions, and then he rates you for every answer. And like, I don't know if you watch Seinfeld, there's a Soup Nazi episode, and he's similar. He will not sell you paint if he doesn't like you. And he's so specialty colors, and I haven't really tried it on the ground, and I did, and for me, it's making a difference, so why would I spend
Just-
$100
it's a very, very expensive color.
Extremely, yeah. But, some people get excited about it as a storm color, but, there are tricks you can do, right? So if you want a color to seem more vibrant, then you put duller colors around it. So if you want a really vibrant blue, everything else around it will seem more vibrant, so you can do that. I mean, my God, there were painters that were painting. I mean, Rembrandt's palette was insanely narrow. It's a really narrow palette, very few colors. I mean, you go over his paintings, and I mean, not in reproduction, look at one from life. Oh my God, it looks like he had 900 tubes of paint. I mean, they're beautiful, incredibly colorful. So, this is why. That is expensive.
I was simply curious about that because I remember that we did go over what was it called? Work study?
Yeah.
Where we had to find the painting and we observed it before. And I remember talking with Mr. Bannan about the lapis blue paint and how expensive it was. And I was curious if you even get it anymore, so I looked up and you can. Not to mention on sites like eBay, you can actually buy the powdered color itself and then make your own. So I just was curious if you ever used it.
Yeah, you should try it if you're interested. Why not? That's what I did. I was interested, so I tried. I mean, I think people.
If I have the money.
Well, I think people use it as a base. So you would thin it down and put it over.
Well, that does make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that could work for a Nike. For a Nike as well.
People might be straight.
Cool.
It'd be a shame almost to mix it with it. It's like, so.
I know. Well, it's a tube like this was really, I don't remember what it was, but it was really expensive. It was just like an ounce. Or a half
Maybe
ounce.
when I have the money and I need and I absolutely need.
Yes, John.
Quick question. I think probably you're never finished with the painting until you die or you sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a comment there. A question is, how fast do you work? How, it's very esoteric. Just say on this painting, about how much time do you have invested in it?
I used to clock my hours because I was curious. And I stopped doing that because it's too tedious, but maybe 30 to 40 hours. I really slow paint journal. Probably because I never get it the first time and I have to repaint things and redraw things. It's never start to finish forward motion ever. I wish it was.
No.
No. That's all right.
Yeah. So, too long.
Do you set up this whole still life at once? Okay.
And it
It's not-
changes as I paint, it changes. They go off.
Kate Wilson.
Or add and take away.
Yeah. Okay.
Where did you get your ideas for the frames?
Other artists. So when I go to shows, I look at how they're being framed, and the simplest idea is what I adopt because I'm not a carpenter. So the simplest frames that I see, I really try to create, and yeah, so that's where. I mean, I was told recently I was at an exhibition, and the guy you don't need to frame your paintings. Why are you framing your paintings? No one frames them anymore. And he's right. I mean, I don't know about you, but I go look at galleries and paintings, the oil paintings aren't framed. A lot of times. I mean, you experience this too.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm like,
I like frames.
I do too. I think it separates it from the wall.
I do. I like frames. I don't think that they're always necessary. I mean, I think that people stop framing things once you got into the era of the movable mural, the great, big, gigantic paintings in the 1950s. And I think that's when people stopped using them. But I still find that I like the transition. I like the transition from wall to the inside of the image. But I think it depends on the kind of painting. I really think it depends on the kind of painting you're painting.
That's true.
I think what kind of painting are you painting? I've had long discussions with people about frames.
It's interesting you bring it up, because my professor stressed that a lot, like the idea of like a wall and the painting, where does it stop, and what are you going to do with that space?
If
So,
the
like,
painting
working with
becomes the
frames.
wall,
Exactly.
which is some items, if the painting is the wall, well then the frame is unnecessary. Or I mean, there's other arguments too, but if I think it's appropriate when you're creating a world inside. And so having the transition between wall and creative world, I think makes sense.
Well, and too, sometimes you need to, so the painting is intimate and you need to beef it up. I mean, so, you know, like some, you look at, you go to, you know, a major gallery, major museum, and you see these little bitty paintings, these big, big frames, and usually they're ornate, right? But making a bigger presence on the wall, so for little ones,
Well, look at like Dutch frames, you know, a little tiny painting.
big frame, yeah, because it needs something to feel its weight on the wall. Yeah.
So
yeah.
something I was actually thinking about asking about was, there's just little paintings, you know, why did you make it so little, and then why did you make the frame so big? Was it just for presence?
For presence,
You
yeah.
need something to guide your eye to the painting.
Yeah, to give it some presence for the wall, because I for a long time I did miniature paintings, much smaller than that. I mean, they were so, and I would frame them, and they get lost on the wall. And so I thought, how do you do this? And so I just went to galleries and looked, what are people doing? They're making contemporary. I mean, I'm not painting in 1692, so I'm not going to put, you know, a 15-inch, you know, a 5-inch ornate gold frame on my painting, because I'm not painting in that manner, and I'm painting in 2014. But that's what they were doing, and I thought that works. So the nice thing about art is you can steal all the time. You just take ideas and make them your own. It's kind of great. I mean, where else can you do that?
I do have a silly question, but do you have a sweet tooth?
Yeah, a little bit, but no more than anyone else. I don't think. No.
All right, I was just curious because cake.
And you feed the neighborhood when you know it's still up?
Well, they're fake. Most of them are fake.
Oh, they are.
The white ones are real. The yellow one is real.
So they're cut, especially when they're cut.
Yeah. Well, if you see them, well, no. There's a yellow. That one behind me is fake.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And the ones with the pink icing around the edges, those I made, they're fake. So
Nice.
probably half of them are fake. And the other half brought in my studio. It's really cool.
That's another body of work.
Yeah. Yeah, this one sat out for 9 months.
Ew.
Yeah. It's gross.
But look at the final result though.
Yeah, it's
That's
fine.
true.
It's fine.
Painting's beautiful, real thing is disgusting.
It is.
That's great. I don't know, does anybody else?
I do have one more. I'm not sure if this has been covered or not, but at what age did you realize that you were interested in painting?
Oh, I don't know. I guess we're all interested when we get into finger paint. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm serious. It's really visceral, and it's like primal. You know, you want to move this colored mud around. I guess, and then maybe in high school I got interested in oil painting. My grandma was an oil painter, so I always saw it happening.
I was about to ask when you discovered that you prefer oil paint over things such as watercolor and acrylic.
Well, maybe just because it was more versatile.
Makes sense.
And it was more challenging. So I like the challenge. I like being frustrated.
And then you were at Indiana
Well,
University,
yeah.
and they have got a very strong painting, especially.
There was no option of painting with acrylic or watercolor.
Ew, acrylic.
Yeah,
This is
not
real
class
paint.
either. This is real. Yeah.
Well, you can maybe ask individually, but we really, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing all these wonderful paintings. And